As well, and good luck and Shua Tov to everyone. And the song Hashem Roish, V'lo Lezonov, V'yisarak Lemala V'lo Yisrael. Words from the sefer that we learned this morning, from the brachas that were given to the Jewish people. And the song Hashem Roish, V'lo Lezonov, we should be as a head and not as a tail. V'yisarak Lemala V'lo Yisrael. We should be only above and not below. When naming this pasuk, when listening to the naming this morning, obviously this reminded me of this time of year. Yehirotzo, we will say on Rosh Hashanah, She'iniya l'roish v'lo l'zonov. It will be a head as a head and not as a tail, mimicking the language of the pasuk. There's a double expression twice in the pasukim. We should be a roish, a head, and not a zonov, not a tail. Well, if we're a head, of course we're not a tail. We should only be above. We shouldn't be below. But of course, if we're upwards, then we're not downwards. And each turn of phrase here means something different. We should be as a roish, a head, below the zonov. Sometimes it's possible for someone to be a leader, to be creating initiatives, to be doing things. But in fact, actually, tragically, their zonov, their tail, they're not making their decisions. They're just influenced by the environment around, going along with the drift, with the flow, without proactively thinking about what they're about. It's possible for us to be above, but then to end up down below. This is the way of the world. We throw the stone in the air, it's upwards, but then the force of gravity drags it back down. And these are therefore the languages, the pasukim that we think about at this time of year. Rosh Hashanah is time for us to pause, to think, Yom Yerayim, Selichot, are we a roish, but are we also lo lezonov? Are we just going along as a tail to something else, rather than taking control of our own growth, our own spirituality, our own development, our own focus? It's nice that Selichot, Yom Yerayim give us a lift, but will it and then end up as lamata, like the stone passed upwards, full of energy put into it, but then ends up back down lamata? Or is this an achievement and a growth which remains genuinely lamala? So these are words of introduction to the Selichos, to Rosh Hashanah, to Yom Kippur, to Yom Yerayim. And I can't think of better words of introduction for our esteemed guest speaker this evening, Rabbi Herman, someone who throughout his life has been a roish, someone who has created initiatives of Torah, of Yiddishkeit, of growth, someone who is lamala, below the matter, someone who represents and really is a role model of that which is upwards focused, rather than drifting downwards. And in thanks in advance to you for visiting us, for speaking to us this evening, really want to give you from our heart and from the hearts of the whole community, that you should be a roish v'lo lezonov. You should continue to be well, to be able to give and contribute to Klal Yisrael. And that's the wish we give you both personally and community. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those very, very warm words of introduction. And my wonderful mother-in-law is listening. Selichos, we're here again. And I think, none of us know what Rosh Hashanah will bring. But at this point in time, we know what a Rosh Hashanah has brought. Reflect back on a whole year. And it's not been an easy year for Klal Yisrael. Not been an easy year for the world in general. I can't help thinking of those words of Yehuda Halevi when surveying the world and his relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I am Tzachar. Where do I find you? Makom chatomi v'nedom, when your place is hidden and concealed. But I am Tzachar. Where do I not find you? When your glory fills the world. And I somehow feel this year, as we come into Rosh Hashanah and reflect on the year that's just been, with the conflict in Israel and all the crises and tragedies that we've had, on the one hand, we feel it's difficult to connect, difficult to key in. On the other hand, I learned Tzachar. This time last year, the COVID situation was much more dire. It was never ending. hoping it's Hashem that we are through almost there. I am Socha, where do I not find you? So I feel the challenge to hopefully share an idea that inspires me and will hopefully lift us all into the Selichot. One of the most puzzling statements, if one can say that, about Rosh Hashanah is a statement in Gemara Rosh Hashanah Daf Tes Zayin. Why do we blow the shofar when we sit and when we stand in all types of formats? Says the Gemara, to confuse the Satan. To confuse the Satan. Now, what does that mean? The Satan doesn't know it's Rosh Hashanah. He hasn't got his apple and honey. Doesn't recognize the same thing happens year by year. In what way can we confuse the Satan? So I want to share with you a concept which is taken from Rav Hollander. Rav Hollander died in 1980, one of the most influential thinkers of the late 20th century, has many famous Talmidim, including Rabbi Fachler, amongst many others, great thinker. And he has a whole mimer, a whole essay, which revolves around the following structure. And within this, he addresses this question. The world exists in two states of being. One that you might call the vivid and the dormant. Two states of being. And if we analyze Jewish history and analyze the world, we'll see there's a constant, ongoing situation of two states of being. The vivid and the dormant. Fascinating example of it. And that actually, we give kavod not just to the vivid, but sometimes even to the dormant. Because when the dormant and when the vivid concedes the dormant, we retain respect for that which was once vivid. Beautiful and poignant example. Gemara and Brachos is Zobin, an elderly person, Sheshachak Talmudah, a Talmud Chacham that was once respected, that was once renowned for his Torah scholarship, but sadly, maybe illness of one form or another, he no longer remembers his Torah scholarship. It's all forgotten. You can't get a psak halacha from it. Nonetheless, the Gemara and Brachos paskins or guides us that we should have kavod for a Zokin Sheshachak Talmudah. But he's no longer active, it's dormant. But the vivid conceded to the dormant, we retain respect for that which was once there. Where is that learned out from? From the fact that the Divrei luchos were not in Ba'arim. Picture the scene, you can imagine, Moshe Rabbeinu comes down from Har Sinai with the luchos in his hands and he smashes the luchos. Smashes the luchos. I know what I would have said to Moshe Rabbeinu, do me a favor, can we just move on from those, put them in shemus, bury them, conceal them somewhere else? But they get put in the Aron HaKodesh. They get put in the Aron, and they travel with Klal Yisrael throughout the generation. Now, why was that the case? Because even though they're no longer active, they're now dormant, but nonetheless, they still retain a role insofar as their impact had not evaporated. On the contrary, it remains an aspiration to one day be able to reawaken, to be able to reignite, to be able to resurrect that which was supposed to have been. From there, the Gemara and Brachos learns now that if we have covered for the luchos, the shivrei luchos, the shattered dreams, then therefore, if we have a Talmud Chacham, Sheshachak Talmudah, no longer active in that sense, but we give respect to the dormant. Life is a constant of these two parallel stages, the active and the dormant. But in fact, fascinating. We're all familiar, everyone who learns is familiar with the concept of Yeridas Adoros. Yeridas Adoros, that means that the Rishonim were greater than the Achronim, they're not as great as the Tanoim, or the Amoraim, or the Tanoim. There's Yeridas Adoros. And each generation is slightly weaker than the generation before. Those who are closer to Har Sinai had a stronger, more vibrant message. That's the way it is. Does that mean we stop learning because we can't no longer hear that voice with the same clarity? Of course not. There's learning all over the world, and there will be learning all over the world. But nonetheless, we're constantly trying to understand that which is now dormant, the voice that is no longer as clear or as vivid as it once was. When will all that change? Everyone learns Gemara, it's giving the word taken. When Mashiach comes, when Eliyahu comes, there are certain questions left unresolved in the Gemara. Gemara grapples back and forth with many, many issues. And sometimes the Gemara says, take it. We actually don't know. We don't know. We actually can't hear that voice in the same sense of clarity. But there will be a time when Eliyahu Hanavi comes and we'll be able to say to him, can you amplify that voice once again? Can we hear that clarity once again? That which was dormant will become active, alive, and real in the Moshe Mashiach. A constant two parallel stages. But sometimes it's not just that the dormant concedes to the active, but the dormant reverberates. We can still hear that voice alongside the active. And the most powerful example of that is the Akedah itself. I remember some years ago, I was giving a talk somewhere, and I don't remember who it was, like 20 years ago, and a father approached me with his rather precocious teenager, who asked him a question, Daddy, what would you do if God told you to sacrifice me? It was a particularly precocious teenager, so I went to him the first thing that came into my mind. The Akedah. Nothing happened. There was a stay of execution. Nothing happened. So what was left? What remained of the Akedah? Dormant intentions, unfulfilled commitment, nothing happened. And yet, that single episode sustains us ad hayom hazeh. We're living off the credit of the Akedah that never took place. So here we see that not only, as it were, it's true that the dormant gave way to the active was a stay of execution, but the dormant reverberates. That message, that voice, that concept still is there. So sometimes they literally live side by side. And what was the ultimate symbol of the Akedah? That was the shofar. So Rav Hollander explains that the shofar is the mechanism which allows us to reignite, to activate that dormant, to amplify that voice. Just as with the Akedah, even though there was a stay of execution, even though Avraham was told to stop, don't touch him, don't even make a mark on him, even though he walked away from the whole episode, and there was no photograph to take, nothing to put on your Instagram, nothing. Nothing was left there at all, no monument, nothing at all. But nonetheless, it wasn't history, it didn't fade into the past, it remained vital, active, real, such that the Akedah sustains us ad hayom hazeh. The two stages of active and dormant. And the symbol of those two stages becomes the Akedah. The symbol of those two stages becomes the shofar, where the shofar has this power to bring alive that which we thought was dormant. And with this, we can perhaps begin to understand a little bit about this concept of the Arbe versus Satan. Because what happens? What does it mean the Satan gets confused? On that day, the great shofar will sound. What's that day? That day is the Moshe Mashiach. What's that day? That day is when the Satan becomes completely redundant. Job is over. That's it. The Satan is then retired. That's the day when all the Satan's plans and intentions are now confounded. It's all over. So every single year on Rosh Hashanah, when we blow the shofar, we blow it when we're sitting, we blow it when we're standing, we blow it before the Amid, we blow it during the Amid. Says Rabbi Hollander, a magnificent thought. The Yom Hahu, Yitaka Shofar Gadol, could well be the shofar of Rosh Hashanah itself, not a different shofar, but the shofar of Rosh Hashanah itself, which becomes amplified and amplifies that potential within us, such that we ourselves are able to find deep down that ability to create and reignite the ultimate potential that we have in spirituality. It's not a different shofar. It's the amplified sound of the shofar itself. It becomes louder and louder. Is there any surprise in the Satan, as it were, whatever the Satan means, the metaphor for all the negative aspects, all the challenges of our lives? But when it hears that shofar play, and sees Klal Yisrael involved, and sees Klal Yisrael committed, he thinks to himself, 1 second, maybe this is the moment. Maybe it's going to happen now. Maybe this very the shofar will be the one that's magnified. Maybe they're going to find those resources within themselves to bring about the ultimate redemption. Because if you think about it, Rosh Hashanah, of course, is Hayom Haras Olam. It's the day that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world. But what did Hashem create on Rosh Hashanah? It was the birth of mankind. And on that same day, HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates Adam and Chava, and on that same day they sin. On that same day they are expelled. On that same day, all those magnificent plans are relegated to the fire of the dawn. On that day of Rosh Hashanah. So therefore, it's on that day of Rosh Hashanah that has the potential to reverse that process. Because that's on that day where the dormant is most real. On the anniversary of that first collapse is the opportunity for the ultimate restoration. And that is what confuses the Satan. Could it be now? Are Klal able to access that inner potential in themselves to be able to bring alive that dawn? Therefore, says Fachler, this is really the concept. Yes, we live in a constant two states. We live in a constant two states. And that is, as we've seen, even the Zokin Shashokot Kof Moshe, we give him respect because we know the Rabbinic question is still there, there's still an imprint. Not only that, but when Mashiach comes, when the Yohanna comes, we'll pile with our questions. What did Rabbi actually mean? What did Beis Hillel actually mean? What did Shmuel actually mean? What do these pages actually mean? Suddenly, all of that, which we didn't see in the pages, will come back to life, come alive. And that's going to be the great day. And that is the potential for that is on Rosh Hashanah itself. The day of the first collapse is the day of the greatest opportunity for the ultimate restoration. That's a very lofty thought, beautiful thought, very lofty thought. But I want to bring it down very much to earth. I'm going to be very candid. I've got a lot of time thinking about this, because I feel that in our lives sometimes it's not always easy to find inspiration. Not always easy to activate that inspirational voice within us. Sometimes life is challenging, or sometimes the world is challenging, or sometimes we're tired. That's how it goes. And sometimes I feel we ultimately don't hear that inspiration is within ourselves, or almost lose confidence we can find inspiration within ourselves. That's how it goes sometimes. But these days, starting from tonight, the days of Selichot, the days leading up to Rosh Hashanah, and then the assessment Shuvah, these are days that inner voice is literally pulsating. That inner voice is literally pulsating. And we need to be able to access that inner voice. I'm going to make one suggestion as to how we do it. Because the way to activate the dormant voice is to articulate what we really want. We have to say to ourselves, it's sleep tonight, I want to find that connection with your HaKadosh Baruch Hu. To actually say it, to actually speak those words, either through the meaning of the tefillah itself, or in our own private corner, or in our own private space, to actually be able to hear oneself say those words, to create that active voice, to stimulate the dormant voice, to say those words. You know what I want from your HaKadosh Baruch Hu this year? Yes, my shopping list will come later on Yom Kippur. You know what I want from your HaKadosh Baruch Hu this year? I want to connect with you. I want to be a part of your world. I want to be able to find that potential in myself. That is what I want. When we articulate it, when we say it, when we speak those words, when we hear ourselves speaking those words, what we're doing is using the koach of Shofar, and using the koach of Elul, and using the koach of Tishri, and we are literally using our own audible voice to stimulate our own inner voice. And I just want to close with a story that's, I think, a pretty well-known story, because it's about one of our great locals. Some of you may know this story. Mr. Michael Cohen, who may be known by Michael Cohen. I have to say, in my own life, he was one of the people that most actively encouraged me to go into film in my early years. And this is a story which is brought in one of Pesach Krohn's books, the story of when he started a school in Hungary. You know the story? So this was in 1990. So Hungary had been under the domination of communism for the best part of 50 years, quite 40 years. Now, and then in 1990, things had changed, and he was asked to start a school for children in Hungary. And as the story is recorded, he was asked approximately how many children do you think there might be. They did a bit of basic research, and they put up notices expecting 50 children. Hired some premises in one of the local schools, and 450 potential pupils turned up. Absolute sugar, like a panic to try and get everything organized. And there were some major philanthropists, maybe from America, who put money into this in a scramble to try and organize everything to set up a proper school system in a very short space of time. And after a few months, Michael, he organized a meeting with the parents once the school had started to find out how they thought the school was going, what it was doing right, what it could do better, etc. And he asked them, what brought you to this school? What made you have decades of communism, atheism, everything that's antithetical to Judaism? What brought you to this school? And the most people responded, about 20 parents in the room, we had 20 couples in the room, most people responded. This person said, well, I do have Jewish roots, I wanted to reconnect. This person said, the school my child was at, they weren't flourishing. There was one man in the corner who didn't want to speak. And eventually, Mr. Cohen coaxed him, what's your story? He told the following story. In 1944, when the Nazis invaded Hungary, and even though it was towards the latter end of the war, as we know, didn't stop their murderous intentions. Said this man, my family was living in Hungary. And we were not religious in the slightest. Doesn't say the age and man at the time, but as a young boy, he heard his parents arguing downstairs. And he came downstairs and he peeked through the keyhole and heard the debate between his parents. His father said, listen, nobody knows we're Jewish. We've got nothing Jewish in the house. Everyone thinks we're non-Jews. We don't need to move from here. We're okay. His mother expressed panic, and they looked around the room and they spotted one Jewish item, which was a siddur, given to the mother on her wedding day by her mother and given to her on her wedding day. And the father took the siddur, and his wife was sitting by an open fireplace, and he handed her the siddur. And this adult described her as a child, even though I had no idea what this meant. He had this unbelievable, overwhelming sense of fear. And she took the siddur and she threw it into the fire. And he ran upstairs and buried his head into his pillow, and for reasons he couldn't explain, he burst into tears. He somehow or other knew that this was significant, this was momentous, this was tragic. And he said, nearly 50 years later, and now I have an opportunity to give my own child a siddur, and I shouldn't take it. A dormant voice that was quiet for so long. We so often talk about the pinta and the yid. We so often talk about the pinta and the yid. And yet we sometimes forget that we ourselves have a pinta and the yid inside ourselves. We ourselves can access that pinta and the yid. We ourselves can access that inner voice. And there is no more opportune time than the run-up to Rosh Hashanah. On the anniversary of the day when it first collapsed is the opportunity where we can resurrect. If we can only allow ourselves to articulate a true intention, I would like you to hear my voice. I hear my own voice. I want to connect with you. Through the slichos, through the davening, through the shofar, through the tefillah, I want to connect with you. And in that way, in Yetz Hashem, we will be zocher that the shofar Rosh Hashanah this year will be Vayom Yitokah b'shofar Gadol, the shofar that will amplify, magnify, develop to become the shofar, the ultimate redemption of Klal Yisrael. Because Klal Yisrael, we need that redemption. And we need to believe we are capable of creating that redemption from here to there. the plan for the setting up. Just to tell everyone, not a concert. This is participation. Let's all find that inner voice, even though looking around most of you haven't got it. Seriously, Ashrei Yoshvei B'Secho, Oy Yalalu Chosero.
כי הרחמך רבים עולו בטוחים. כי על רחמך רבים עולו סלחנו לעולם הזה כגודל חסדך וכאשר נוססו במצרים ידינו ושום נאמר אדוני סלחתי כבונך Kimothonim Chaim is Boer, Chaim Toivim in the Choni Shoer, the Kol Chaim Chom is Boer, Abitav Aneinu, Veneinu Owe, every reason of
Amen.
Nee, nu weet je maar zeker nog niet flauw nog. La flora ma da che vi castello, per caso non mi ha di no so, ma e ma de noi.
Misschien ook nog even zeggen dat genoemd misschien ook nog verder dat je winnen soms gaan we maar in een reis te houden van deze weg nu hier was nu kan je zou je maar zeggen was nu kaak op een begin was nu zo dit gewoon in het gewoon in een maand pakken dus wel wat zo en echt geweest je dan kan zo in het zo zeggen de winnaar weet je zich af en stap is nog even dat gaan het gaan nu bij een hele studie zo nacht met nog geen zo gewoon
Akotoi no elef gader rikume winu vatrei go ya timit kume winu ya chavokot koisech rachamenu Yosef no apkos nachamenu every gelach mi lag chazishus no boychei avoy nois boychei avoy nois avoy
עכשיו אנחנו מנהלים אדוני צבא ששמע
I Anos osei soleinu chatos, asher no yalnu v'asher chotonu.
Aber ich glaube, das andere Entwicklung kann man. Und ich meine, das ist chicken und fish. Schöne ist so, schon mal spielen so, weiter. Schöne Geld, hat schon mal la